Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this video. Apologies that I didn't get this out on Sunday. This is because of an outage in our area with Virgin Media, so I wasn't able to upload anything, not without using lots of data, which I don't have. So I'm sharing now what I preached on Sunday, which was the fifth Sunday of Lent. The 26th of March. And from the joys of Mothering Sunday, the Sunday before, we're back to the challenge of Dust and Glory, which is the Church of England's Lent series for this year. And in the first half of this course, it was very much about individual failure, individual sin, because the whole thing is a reflection on failure and forgiveness and faith. So from individual sin and failure, we're now thinking about institutional failures and sins, and particularly those of the church. Emma Einarsson, the author of Dust and Glory, writes this: "Hopefully the idea of the church brings many good things to mind for you: love, worship, community. But perhaps there are some things that annoy you too: division, failures, and frustrations with the institution." Oh, how true. So I'm sharing this in the wake of a recent General Synod. And as you will all know from the media and social media, the debates are going on and on and on. There were some controversial decisions made at General Synod, one around the language that we use for God, which I've already shared about, and the other was around the blessing of same-sex relationships. And it seems as though the resolution that's been passed has pretty much upset everyone on every side of the debate. That is the problem with compromise. You run the risk of not pleasing anyone and upsetting everyone, and there's still a lot of flack flying around. And a lot of people are feeling very let down, very frustrated with the Church of England at the moment, not least the wider Anglican Church. But it's not just the national church that experiences divisions and failures and frustrations. So does the local church. Oh yes, St. Wilfrid's included. In the New Testament, we find various letters to various churches, and some of those letters contain various lists of sins. Here's one from Galatians, which I'm going to share with you. Galatians chapter 5. It says the works of the flesh. So the works of the flesh, our unredeemed human nature, are obvious: fornication, impurity, licentiousness, idolatry, sorcery, enmities, strife, jealousy, anger, quarrels, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and things like these. Now, when we come across lists like that, it's very tempting to kind of zero in on the what we might call the more juicy sins, like sexual immorality or impurity, or debauchery, or idolatry, or sorcery, or drunkenness, or carousing. But we often forget or overlook the more boring relational sins, but they are relational. Things like enmity and strife and jealousy and anger and quarrels and dissensions and factions and envy. Again, Emma Einarsson writes, and yet how often do we see these particular works of the flesh consuming churches and communities as people fall out with each other, fail to love each other, and descend into factions and parties, and not the fun kind. As I've said, we've been experiencing an outage here in Virgin Media. Actually, for 5 days, we've been without internet. And it's very frustrating, isn't it, when organisations don't deliver what they're supposed to deliver. And on a similar level, it's frustrating when churches don't deliver what they're supposed to deliver. When churches allow what's sometimes called communal discord to flourish, it's disappointing, it's frustrating, but in fact, more than that, it's a failure of epic proportions, and you might say a failure of cosmic proportions. Because you see, the church at any level is not just a collection of saved individuals. As the writer of the letter to Ephesians reminds us, Christ died and rose again, not just to save each of us on a personal level, but to create a whole new community, a whole new humanity, centered on Christ's values of compassion and forgiveness and reconciliation and love. This new humanity, which Christ died and rose again to create, this new humanity is called the church. And the church is this new humanity, designed to push back against all the forces of rebellion and violence and division that exist both on earth and, if we take the biblical narrative seriously, also in the heavenly realms. So in this sense, the church's mission is truly cosmic. And when she fails to live by Christ's values, but slips back into the old divisive ways of our fallen world, she literally fails on a cosmic scale. And that's why reconciliation is so important to Jesus. Matthew chapter 5, verse 23, Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, "So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift." For Jesus, mending relationships in the church is important and it's urgent. Reconciliation is not to happen tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. It's to happen as soon as possible. Even if you find yourself in the middle of a service, says Jesus, and you realize your brother and sister has something against you. Leave the service, go, be reconciled, and only then and only then come back. It's that urgent and it's that important. And to fail to practice this is to fail in that cosmic mission against the forces of evil, which the church is called to. And so in Revelation chapter 2, we see Christ berating the church in Ephesus, in modern-day Turkey, not for what they have done or not done, but for how they are, or rather how they are not. Christ says this to the church in Ephesus, "But I have this against you, that you have abandoned the love you had at first." Next month is our APCM, our annual general meeting. Every organisation needs one, and we will be having ours in April. We'll be reflecting on 2022, what we've done, how much we've spent, how much we've received. But imagine this. Every year we have to produce a report, not on what we've done or not done, not on how much we've spent or received, but rather on how we have been. And above all, how we have been with one another. That's the report that matters to Jesus. The other reports are important too, but the one that really matters to Jesus is how we have been with one another. I quote again from Emma Einarsson. "We need to focus less on what we are and the limits and boundaries of that, less on what we do and the way our own efforts might save us, and more on the way we are together, the quality of our being and our relating, how we are church." In the words of Revelation, we need as a church to rekindle the love we had at first. Let's be kind to each other and focus more on the qualities that have the potential to bring us together, not drive us apart. For in the end, we are together a demonstration of the wisdom of God, no more and no less. So how are we as church? That's what matters to Jesus. And that's what matters in the cosmic battle between good and evil, into which we are called as church, into which we are called to be a demonstration of God's wisdom to the powers and authorities on this earth and in the heavenly realms. So my prayer is that we may never lose our first love, either for God or for one another. And if we do, well, we may as well just pack up and go home and do something else on a Sunday or whenever else we gather. May we never lose our first love. Amen.